Welcome back to Let's Play Defender's Quest by the developers. I'm Lars Doucet.
And I'm James Catman.
Programmer and writer respectively. And when we last left off, we had just finished the demo content. We had just finished this scene here at the monastery. And now we're going to go straight into the next scene here. So, what are we looking at here in terms of... What act are we in now? This is Act 3?
Yeah, you get the first two acts in the demo.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So now we've just started Act 3. Yeah, and initially, actually, this is an interesting point to talk about. Initially, the entire game was supposed to have 4 acts, I think?
Yeah.
But what was it like? Acts 3 and 4 were like...
ballooning out of control.
Yeah, they were like 7 times longer than Acts 1 and 2 or something like that. And so it actually created a weird signaling problem. People would go into movies and they would see, okay, I've done Act 1, I've done Act 2, and then there were only 2 more tabs here. So they were like, I'm already halfway through the game. But really, there was like, you were maybe 20%, maybe 10% of the way through.
Yeah. Based
on the content. So what happened afterwards is we basically chopped Acts 3 and 4 up into Acts 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that the players would feel like when they got to the end of the demo that there was still lots of content left, you know, in terms of how many battles and cutscenes were left. And this caused some awkward things later because, like, the last couple levels are still, like, in the level files are, like, labeled, like, Act 4, Scene 37 or whatever.
Yeah, oh, that got fun.
That got fun. Should have been more flexible there. But anyway, so yeah, so that was an interesting thing here. So I guess we'll just start this level now and then just talk
Ooh,
about...
who's that blue guy? I haven't seen him before.
Oh.
I wonder if he will be different.
Yeah, we could mouse over him and see what happens, but we'll save the surprise. Okay, and so... is there anything important about this cutscene in particular?
I don't actually remember. Like, most of these cutscenes, it's all kind of a blur, especially because I wrote most of them out of order by the end.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah, you're heading over to the hospital.
Right. Oh, yeah, this is when we... Oh, yeah, and then there's the little explosion sound that we use, like, all the time, and...
Oh, I'm sad we didn't get the screen shake. I used that screen shake so much.
Oh, yeah, well, I think it was because it was off in the distance. But one thing about this was this little, like, road background. Like, when Karen gave us the backgrounds, like, I wanted to, like, make up for the fact that we mostly used, like, a background, like, once, and then we're done with it. So, to get a little more bang for my buck, I had her put a bunch of Photoshop layers in it, so I could, like, mix and match. So, like, there's, like, 4 or 5 scenes with the road in it, and it's all from the same Photoshop file. Like, this one's green, the other one's, like, kind of yellow, the other one's, like, the same, but flipped horizontally. One of them, like, may or may not have a log. Yeah, so that cutscene's just, oh, we have to run. Okay, and then this is one of the first ones where we do something with water. Oh, slack. So as you can see, we've got these guys up here. And so the expectation here is we mix it up a bit. Most of you probably know it's coming, but we'll save the surprise for later. So let's just play it as if we didn't know what was about to happen. And then what you would probably do is that you would wait for enemies to come across. You're expecting them to come across here. So you're going to invest in some... you're going to concentrate fire up there. This looks like a good spot to put her. Because if I boost her, I'm going to cover all of this.
Yeah.
There. I mean, could I put her lower enough to... Actually, that looks like a better spot.
I guess you'll start covering that far right lane there if you boost her enough.
Right, if I boost her 3, I get this, and then this whole lane, and this one there. Like, Rangers are kind of tricky to spot, because what you really want to do is get, like, a whole square of distance out of them.
You might want to plunk down a berserker next to her, kind of draw aggro a little bit so she doesn't get too punched up.
Yeah, I'll put this guy here. I need to get my 3rd attack for these guys. Have I invested in that yet? I guess he needs to get to level 5. Oh, Ket is already at level 5. That's why she's got that. Little marching zombies. Go faster. Okay, and now Slack starts punching them up. And here is the surprise. So yeah, so the surprise obviously is that everyone saw was coming, is that the blue guys can swim. And I mean, this is something you see in tower defense games sometimes. Is people who can take alternate routes through the level, and basically let you short circuit things. I've gotten like so many emails from people who like didn't see this coming and got like super freaked out when the enemy started taking the shortcut across the left. And I do have to say, like I wish I was like a better programmer or whatever, but like well, let me slow down the speed so I can show everyone. Oh, I got the go to the achievements page achievement. The accessibility page. But anyway, like them entering and exiting the water, like it took forever to get that right because it's basically all just little visual tricks. Like when they're entering the water, what happens is first of all they perceptibly sink a little bit, and then like a little water doodad is drawn on top of them like they're in the water, and then when they come out they like rise in position to where their like baseline is, and then it draws a splash in front of them and a splash behind them. And it was really hard to get that to work and to look right coming from all angles. Like I'm sure a smarter programmer than me would have figured it out, but like their actual game center point is in the same place, but what it does is it progressively like chops off pixels from their bottom as they go in before it puts in the little water waistline thing you see here. And then and anyway, it was a lot of complicated special case programming, but I really wanted like some kind of nice visual effect there so that it wasn't just I didn't want them just like walking on the water. I wanted it to seem kind of real. Like if I had bothered to animate this water, I think it would have like sold the effect more. But I just want to. I like putting effort into little touches like that because I think it makes a difference. And so that's kind of all I want to say about that. Do they have any special abilities in this mode of the game besides just being able to go through water?
Not yet, I don't think. Cool.
Wait, okay, and now there's fast guys. But basically, strategically, what this does is that it basically what the player is always trying to do is just exploit a bunch of choke points. They want to gather all the enemies together in one small place and then just maximize DPS there. And so the challenge as a designer is to constantly come up with ideas that foil the player's desire to constantly optimize and force the player to do something else and focus on, because otherwise the game just revolves down to figure out the DPS equation and put as much damage as you can out as quickly as you can. And so the essence of what makes
Oh dear, Kared kinda sucks.
I might have some trouble here. Anyway, so one of the reasons I'm doing poorly in this battle is because I specifically...
Get your head in the game, bro! Come on!
Is that I specifically put this guy over here instead of over here, and so all the blue guys got past me and kinda had to waste time taking them out. And so anyway, what I'm saying is like one of the classic challenges in a tower defense game is that you have to keep battle from just degenerating to a raw DPS equation. Like you have to make players think, oh, it's not just enough to have a really good high average DPS. I've also got to deal out that damage at specific points of the map over specific points of time, and having enemies that can walk, like short circuit different paths and stuff like that forces the player to like take on strategies that aren't just as easy to figure out like that. That's the idea at least.
Yeah, it might be worth throwing a berserk in here in a second.
Yeah. Yeah, well I wanted, if I can clear out the fast guys and survive that, then I should be able to do okay on the rest. And I put Keta on first here. So like we were saying before, generally, like if you're just going for a DPS optimization strategy, oh my gosh, it was close. Whew. Then you want to put her on strong, because that makes sure she doesn't waste any damage. But as I said before, that's not good enough if an enemy is about to hit Azra right the freak now. So we need to be careful. Okay, this guy might need just... And sometimes we made healers the cheapest class in the game, you'll notice. And that's intentional. Please, give me that PSI.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Might need
Bad things are happening.
Okay, let's thin this crowd out here. I think we're gonna be okay.
For the moment, these worm guys are not looking.
Okay, I think we're past the worst of it.
Yeah,
but
I kind of should be able to chew these guys down.
in really early builds of the game, healers were like way more expensive. And then since they're basically a defensive class, like we just kept lowering and lowering and lowering their cost until it felt right, because people just basically weren't using healers. And the reason we had to do that was, I'm going to slow it down so Keta doesn't just win the battle here. The reason we did that was because we wanted there to be some kind of strategic use to them, and so since it only cost 15 to put them down, like that was a sweet spot where players were like, okay, I'm just going to plunk down a cheapo healer just to keep my guys alive. And that's, and then so like since 2 healers equals 1 berserker, the berserker kind of being like the Big Mac in economic terms. There's, well, what is it? What magazine is it? The Economist will like put out these like inflation indexes and like comparisons of world wealth in terms of Big Macs. Like how many hours of work do you need to work in this country's like average daily wage to earn a Big Mac? And so the berserker in Defender's Quest is the Big Mac. It's like, so two healers is like one berserker. You know, a knight is like 2 berserkers and stuff like that. So you're like, would I rather have a berserker than what I'm spending it on is kind of the question. So we beat that kind of handily. Now,
here we go.
Yeah, flurry is pretty much like one of the best skills. Because, and what was the design idea behind the berserker exactly? It's like a character who does better the more overwhelmed they are.
Yeah, basically, a berserker is almost wasted if he's going one-on-one.
Right. And so flurry is one of the skills that like really brings that out. You know, here with Slash, you know, he's still kind of a one-on-one guy. You know, it's a really quick attack. And then double hit, you know, lets him hit people. But what's really interesting about flurry is that it specifically says up to 5 foes. You see that in double hit too, but so what flurry can do is that it can hit up to 5 guys, or it can hit 1 guy 5 times. And so it's not exactly AoE, like he does essentially get some AoE attacks, like Swipe and Whirlwind. But it's definitely designed for crowd control, especially against unarmored enemies. And then this guy, we can either invest in just making him like a generic healer. We can give him this little attack here, which is really useful against dark enemies, or we can give him some hit points so he doesn't die as fast. Should we just unlock this one?
Sure.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice. It's nice to have 2 healers who can deal with dark enemies when they show up. And we won't see those for a while. Like, I mean, it's going to be like another 10 battles at least before we see a dark enemy, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but we tell you in the skill here for the observant people, so they can figure it out later. What should I invest in? I'll get Frenzy for now. Alrighty, now we are at the hospital, and our new character comes in.
This is another fan favorite here. Apparently, people just love psychopaths, so
yeah,
I'll keep that in mind for future projects.
Yeah, like, what was it? Yeah, this is Rena here, and what was it? There was one reviewer, I think, for Jay's Games. She, like, at the end of her review, she put Slack plus Rena forever. But yeah, so she's the, what is it exactly? The Quaid Princess?
Yeah.
And what can you tell us about Quaid culture?
So this is the very first time we meet a Quaid person.
At least one that joins her party.
Yeah, I mean, you can hire generics, but we don't have anybody with a speaking role or an identifiable personality up until this point.
Right. Cool. So now we've got Rena. Let's go. I'm going to go buy some weapons while you talk about the Quaid and Rena and why she is awesome, etc.
So I think we get a little bit... We haven't unlocked any unique weapons yet, have we?
No, we haven't. I mean, now might be an interesting time to go back and maybe try an earlier mission.
Because that's actually where most of our information, kind of our backstory stuff gets written in. Like, we had all this information that we'd written up on our cultures and everything.
Right, so let's do that here. And so this is actually, well, we'll get into the Quaid and Rena a little bit more, because there'll be some more cutscenes introducing her. But let's go real quick and try and beat these extreme battles. Like, the way the game is designed in terms of grinding, I wrote an article about this called RPGs Challenge and Grinding, and I'll link that in a YouTube annotation or something here. But basically, like, most RPGs have grinding. And what I was trying to say about grinding is that it is not great, but it is kind of a safety valve. So like when I was playing RPGs when I was 8 years old, you know, they were the only kinds of video games I could beat. You couldn't beat Contra, couldn't beat Ninja Gaiden, couldn't even beat Super Mario Brothers. Like, games were hard back then. But RPGs, even as like grindy and time sinky as they were back then, it came with this implicit promise: if you just keep playing me long enough, you'll eventually be able to beat me. And that was kind of something that it appealed to me. It's like a very crude accessibility feature, that it is possible to beat this if you just put enough time into it. And so that's one thing about grinding, even though grinding has a bad reputation, that I actually like. But what I hate about grinding is that it's boring. So what we wanted to do in this game is give you a new approach to quote-unquote grinding. So basically at a certain point you're encouraged to go back and play the previous missions. And if you do so, you get these one-time bonuses and unique equipment. And you also have newly designed battles. So you're playing new content and you're getting big bonuses, and you get that bonus only when you beat the challenge the first time, which discourages you from playing battles you've beaten over and over and over and over again, and encourages you to go play something new and experience some new content. So whenever it's time for you to power level, you can do it while still having fun, instead of just like, you know, basically just mashing go on a progress bar. Let's check real quick what the levels of these enemies were. We were at 5 to 12, so I think we can probably handle over these like 7 to 9 or something. Yeah, 6 to 10. If we just beat 5 to 12, this should be like right up our alley. And if you beat it on Extreme, then you get the reward for beating it on for Advanced as well.
So we'll snag our Wood Bow and the Hunter Warrior.
And the Hunter Warrior is going to be the unique one. And then we also get to check out Rena's abilities, and she should come equipped with some basic stuff. So normally I would put Slack here, but actually I think I would put her here, because her advantage is she doesn't need to, strictly speaking, be on the front line.
Yeah.
I could even put her here. Now I'll put her there.
There she'll draw some aggro, and she can take a lot more punishment than Slack can.
Right, that's actually interesting. You know, one thing we kind of decided with our Ice Mages is they were originally supposed to be like basically a different flavor of Ranger. Your typical squishy mage with long-range projectile attacks, you know. I mean, in MMOs, your mages are often your DPS units who can't take any damage. But we actually decided it fit more with Rena's personality and kind of mechanics we wanted to have her kind of be a tank mage. So she is the only class in the game besides the knights, who are just tanks, who can equip heavy armor. And we make her an AoE character rather than a strictly speaking ranged attacker. She has some ranged attacks, but she's more AoE. And she's also a debuffer. She slows enemies down. And because she's slowing enemies down all around her, and those enemies might be aggressive enemies, she's going to take more damage. So it made sense to give her some armor to protect her. And we think that kind of... It's also nice that kind of subverts the typical squishy mage trope. But,
yeah, character design-wise, it was interesting to try to figure out a set of armor that was both real and would still allow her to look like a woman.
Right.
So we ended up settling on a coat of plates there.
Yeah, that's the ones, like, all the little dots here are little rivets.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you put women in historically accurate armor, they just look like men. I mean, honestly speaking, the men don't like men, look like men either. They all just look like armored robots. So, I mean, we could go into that whole ordeal, but plenty of articles have been written about that by people smarter than us, so we won't waste anybody's time.
But basically, I wanted to avoid the, like, well, she's a girl, so she's basically wearing a metal bikini, and I also wanted to avoid the, like, well, everyone just looks like a hockey player. So, actually what she's wearing is technically a brigandine. Coat of plates and a brigandine are about 100 years apart.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then I think you can purchase both because it's a fantasy game. And
yeah, we already get gripes from Nathaniel because none of our armored people wear helmets to protect their most important asset. But we just figure it's just like, you know, they compromise on that even in historical war movies, where it's like you never take your helmet off, but then you can't tell what anyone looks like.
Except in this close-up.
Yeah. Oh, I should have probably put a healer down rather than spend money on that. Anyway, I should put some berserkers down here on the corners. That seems to make more sense. Is she attacking strong? Yeah. You should attack strong too. I want to maximize damage. And then she set on fast, which is what you want your ice mages to do. So let's go over her attacks real quick. She has 3 attacks right now. She has Ice Ball, which is basically just like a little slow projectile. And then she has Ice Shard, which can actually pierce through enemies, especially if you get some upgrades for it. Right now it just like hits an enemy for damage. And then Sleet is her AoE attack that gives you really good slowdown. Ice Ball gives you slowdown too. Ice Shard just does damage. And so depending on how you spec them, you can optimize her for damage or for debuffing, depending on how you like to play. And I like to specialize Rena in just slowing people down, because that's just in tower defense. One of your most precious assets is time, because it usually just runs out, and there's so few ways to set the clock back. So anything that can give you just a little more time to get your damage across can just be really, really valuable. And ice mages are pretty much one of the only ways to do that. So, along with rangers, rangers and ice mages are kind of the most perennially overpowered units, I feel like.
Yeah.
And so we had to constantly balance them to be so that your whole strategy wasn't just ice mages and rangers. And so we would sometimes have to like come up with enemies specifically to be foils for those 2 units and put that in New Game Plus. Slack could use some help here. You know what? I think a frenzy, right when we're trying to deal with the horrible, horrible, horrible worms, would be really good. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Probably want to yank Slack out and plunk him down in the back, and if we could get him, he's got that 3rd level attack now. He's got Flurry, if we can get him boosted to it.
Oh, crap. Okay, well, you know what? I would much rather have Slack with Flurry than some crappy guy with something else.
And if you could get Rena down by him, it would give him a little bit longer to...
I'm going to put her right here.
Oh dear.
Die. You, attack first. Yes, rapid shot. Glorious! Cool. Okay, that was close. He's leveled up already. Zilias. Better regeneration. That sounds good. And Keta... Okay, so that sounds nice. We could spec her with Bleed, which also lets us get poison, or we could basically just ignore that for now. Just focus on...
I always liked pumping up Sharpshooter.
That's a pretty overpowered skill right there. Let's give him Blinding. That's really helpful. So, Blinding makes it so that an enemy that has been blinded, has a 75% chance of missing every time they attack. And that's before it checks against your dodge stat. And I really liked that because, it gave... So the healers can't really do much damage, but it gives you more reason to invest in their attack skills. And so so when you plonk down a healer and you boost them to level 2, not only are they healing people, but they're also making the enemies less likely to kill you. And that seemed good. Okay, so cool. So these are a lot of little blurbs that James put into all the equipment in the game that would come up. And I kind of like that. So you want to talk about this a little bit, Real?
Yeah, basically we had all this kind of backstory information about the world, about the civilizations, and we wanted to get it into the game in an organic way, and we wanted to avoid the kind of, oh, here's just a dictionary that we're going to throw at you.
Right.
So I thought if we could establish these as part of things that you care about, as part of things that you're using anyways, it's one, going to feel like we're not just giving you a history lesson about something that's made up and doesn't matter, and 2, it's going to feel like it's actually part of the world.
Right. And then the other thing that I kind of like about this description here is that it tells you a lot of things. So one thing that really bugs me in games a lot is when they compartmentalize an entire class of things into like, when they just like overgeneralize. Like you'll have one religion in a game that like speaks for all of religion, as if there's only like one religion in the world, or like there's one group of stand-ins for Native Americans, you know, and so like our nomads here are kind of like maybe the closest thing to that. They're the low-tech society, indigenous population to wherever they're from, kind of mistreated by the empires or whatever. But there's like, just like there are with any indigenous tribe or any people, honestly, or, you know, Americans or French people, there's like a million little tribes of them. There's not just like the nomads, even though maybe outsiders see them that way. And so like what I love is that you say things like Sedeka, or however that's pronounced. And then what is Keda's tribe? Geka?
Yeah, Keda's a Geka tribe, nomad.
And yeah, there's a bunch of different nomad tribes. And I like the little touches here where they talks about family gods and little things like that. So you get little touches of how each of the little groups is different. And red victory stripes at the tips indicate that this weapon was put to much use in some conflict long forgotten. And I like the whole history of, you know, the symbol for good hunting has been painted over with the symbol for death, so that there's this concept of like history and stuff to it. This screen right here, which we're seeing, I'll make a quick segue to a technical note, is this screen right here I call the You Got screen, which is used to give you characters, scrap, equipment, whatever. And I actually put a little effort into it to make sure that it would be pretty flexible. So here, it's actually got stacked equipment that you're getting. You not only got this item here, but you also got the previous one from the last battle. And so I just wanted it to be like a really smooth experience. And when it gets to the last item in the list, it gives you an option to equip it right then, because that's kind of the first thing you want to do once you've got something. Yep. But I didn't want to put this equip button on the previous screen,
because then you could miss the stacked rewards that are below it.
And then I didn't want to like, then it would be complicated. Then I would need to like show the You Got this other thing too after you leave the equip screen.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd just save it for the last item in the stack. So now here we go. So Keda is going to equip this awesome piece of unique weaponry, which is massively better than anything we could find at a store. And now that we have 2 other wood bows, it wouldn't be a bad idea to hire some other rangers to give them these awesome hand-me-downs that we have now. Speaking of, let's make sure that in our accessibility options, we have no failure for, no penalty for absence. Because some of our guys weren't on the field before and they got lower experience. I kind of feel like it might have been a mistake to leave the default at losing 50%. I was honestly speaking just kind of following tradition on that level. But it ultimately winds up in requiring that if you don't hire people early and you don't put them in every battle, you spend forever grinding them up. And I feel kind of bad about that. That was not what I intended, but that's kind of the way it is now.